I can tell you that some of the speaking engagements that I've had, some of the clients that I've had over the years have all come from the relationships that I built with my podcast.
Welcome to the Raw and Real podcast. Are you dreaming of changing your life through opening a business, or are you curious what obstacles entrepreneurs had to overcome on their journey? Then you're in the right place. My name is Agnes and I'm your host. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Raw and Real. Today's guest on the show is Elzie Flenard. Elzie is a business leader, an entrepreneur, a creative, a coach, and a speaker. He has coached basketball teams, run a music recording and production company, and today he hosts the Enterprise Now podcast, the Live Me podcast, and runs a podcast agency that provides production, training, and coaching services. Hey, Elzie, thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, hello there. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm also really excited because we both share big passion, right? Podcasting. So I'm just also very curious to get to know more about you before we really dive into the topic, which we can probably talk for hours about. So can you tell us first a little bit, like where do you come from and how did you really end up in podcasting?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as in an effort not to monopolize the entire show, I'll keep this brief. But I grew up in a small town, very, very rural, no stoplights, one grocery store. And I always knew that I wanted to use my voice to move people, to inspire people. And so at a young age, I was writing songs, making music, and meeting people and understanding how to connect art with people, right? Creating memories and helping them uh, feel depending on the music. And so fast forward, I discovered podcasting, and I absolutely fell in love with it for a number of reasons. But I could listen to what I wanted to listen to when I wanted to listen, and it was targeted and focused content. It wasn't a bunch of fluff and then you get to the meat of it. It was really direct and content rich. And so I dove in both feet, launched my own show, and fell in even deeper in love with podcasting, and over time started to help other people launch their shows and help grow their business through podcasting. So I've always kind of been a storyteller, and podcasting is just another way, another vehicle and method to tell stories.
So I'm wondering, like, how did you really discover podcasts, or when was the first time you came across one? Like, and how was it for you?
Yeah, when was the first time? So a funny story. So I actually launched an internet radio station. And the
Mm.
idea was I was going to have Enterprise Now, which is a business show, and we were going to talk business 24/7. And I was going to get other shows on the station 24/7, business 365 from all over the world. Ran across Entrepreneurs on Fire, the podcast. And I, again, absolutely fell in love with it. And I started doing some research. I'm a planner. So I started to research where the podcasting genre or medium was, where it was going, and I thought that it was going to be a big deal in the next 3 or 4 years. Happy to say I was right. It's exploding, right, and continuing to do so. And so I shut down the internet radio station and focused on my podcast, and that's kind of how my agency grew, out of people wanting to also start their shows. So that's how I kind of got in exposed to podcasting, and I've been hooked ever since.
Where did you learn everything about it? Was it also for you that you just learned stuff on the go and checked YouTube videos, or how was it for you?
A combination. I like structure and organization. So YouTube learning is not quite for me because it can tend to be everywhere. So I did some of that when I needed to, but I took courses. I studied. I bought books, and I really just went through it as if I were going to class. And I learned that way. Not to say that I didn't leverage YouTube because it's a great resource, but I really wanted a structured, okay, here's step one, an organized way to learn it. And I think that actually helped me because now I can I can teach other people that same way versus just saying, hey, just go to YouTube and learn it. That is a way to do it, but I think the most efficient way is to really have a structure behind your learning and building on those foundational skills.
And I'm wondering, what were your ideas in the beginning when you started your own podcast, and what were you really like struggling with?
Struggling with, to be honest, the only goal I had was to get in front of business owners and learn from them. That was literally my goal. And mission accomplished, right? I was able to get to speak with business leaders from all over the world. I even did a podcast, and I think he was out of South America, and they had had a power outage, so he was doing the podcast on a backup generator, and just dropped just gems about business and entrepreneurship. So I've had so many experiences and learned so many concepts and theories from practitioners, right? These aren't people who are teaching business. These are people who are doing business. So literally that was my only goal. And over time, of course, that changed. But initially, that was my only goal. I wanted to be consistent and meet people and learn from them.
How was it then for you from the beginning? Did you already monetize from episode one?
No, my monetization came in the form of relationships. I can tell you that some of the speaking engagements that I've had, some of the clients that I've had over the years have all come from the relationships that I built with my podcast. So for me, that's in some ways a lot more valuable than the 25 to 35, CPM dollars per CPM that you can get with an ad, right? Because those relationships are long lasting. And if done well, they refer other people and they refer other people. So long term for me, it was more value in building those relationships versus spending my time trying to get sponsors. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but I think it goes back to understanding what your goal is in the first place and then building it from there. If that's your goal from day one, then make sure that you have a high quality product that brands want to associate with. It shouldn't sound like you're doing your podcast in a potato, right? Because brands want to be associated with excellence, and so your show needs to reflect that. But again, it all goes back to what your goals are in the first place, and that will inform how you structure your show moving forward.
So those relationships that you built with people you got on your show, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about how you were strategic about it, like how you really managed to get maybe high level people on, and then how you really managed to get business from it, right?
Yeah. In the early days, it was completely random. It was just, will you please come on my podcast? If you're breathing and you have a business, yes, you are qualified. But as we grew and I would have these PR companies start to reach out and pitch people, then I was a little bit more selective and I started to be more strategic. It's like, okay, would this person make a good client, or are they in a sphere of influence of people who would make great clients, right? And I started there and I said, okay, if this person meets these two criteria, then they're qualified to be a guest. And from there, the strategy is simple. Simply add value and build relationships, right? And I know it sounds really simple, but it's magical when done well. From that point, it was like, okay, what can I do and to help this person? What are they looking for? Who do they want to get in front of? Who do they want to meet? And I made it my mission and my business to make that happen. Because when you give to people, they tend to want, especially with the expectation of nothing in return. If I can send two good guests to your podcast, you're gonna think, man, Elzie he's a really cool guy. He sent two guests to my podcast, and that led to this, and that led to that. And so now when you think about people who might need what I do, you'll think of me. And so that has been the number one thing that I've done in my business that has allowed me to be here where I am, is having that farmer mentality. By nature, I'm a giver and I want to give value. And so that has allowed me to reap the rewards of that.
So, how long did that take for you until you really saw active results? Because based on that concept, it can really also take quite a long time until someone is in the right stage when they might need you, right?
It could. Or, for example, if you think about the farmer analogy, um, grapes are different than onions and different than watermelons or apples. So you really have to understand your sales cycle or your planting cycle, I guess in this analogy, and understand that certain industries and certain types of relationships are going to take longer than others, and it's geographical as well. I can tell you that people on the East Coast and West Coast do business a lot differently than people in the Midwest here in the States. I'm in Wisconsin. We like to have a cup of coffee. We like to get to know you and what you do and your kids and if you're married and how all the stuff. People from other places, do you have what I need? Is it at a price that I can afford? Okay, great. Let's do business. Right. And so you have to understand that. So it's a different type of seed that plants and grows, but understanding how long that might take and understand the nuances of your field are all important aspects of it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, what do you think is really the best way for someone to leverage podcasting to grow their business?
Sell your own stuff. If you're a coach, even if you don't have a product, affiliate marketing is an option. You can partner with somebody who does have a product or a service. The return on investment is a lot higher, and it's a lot simple. I don't want to say easy, but it's a lot simpler to sell your own products, build your own brand than it is to get a sponsor. I've had sponsors in the past, but they sought us out. I didn't email them and say, "Hey, will you sponsor my show?" They heard us, they saw us, they reached out, and we did it. Because I number one, I was really selective of who I put in front of my audience, and number two, I just didn't want to put in that work, that effort to do that when I could build my own brand. So I would say, um, you really, again, going back to what your goals are in the first place, you have to understand the cost, the risks, the rewards of both, and then decide which path you shall take, because they're different. It could be very lucrative if you have 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 listeners, but not so much if you have less than that. To be quite honest, if you don't have 2,000 listeners, it probably doesn't make sense financially to get a sponsor. If you have 25,000 listeners, it might be something that you want to look into. So I think it depends again on your goals and how many listeners you have. But not only downloads, you want to take into account your social reach and your email list as well. And all of those things make up your brand and what you can offer to a sponsor.
And I'm wondering, like, when you started out, how was it going for you? Because I can also imagine that there were quite some struggles in the beginning.
Yeah, I would say the biggest struggle was the fact that I had to do everything. I had to source guests, I had to facilitate getting them on the show, which I don't have to tell you, it can be a lot of work. I had to do the interview, I had to edit the interview, I had to promote the interview, and publishing and all the stuff I had to do myself. um but what helped is when I got help and somebody else could help with the process, that allowed me to focus on the things that I enjoy the most and really allow me to double down on those things that I was good at, and have somebody else do the things that I didn't want to do. Unfortunately, until you can get to that point, you just have to suck it up, buttercup, and do the work.
What do you think is the best way to really keep the listeners engaged, right? And to make sure that they really reach out to you apart from saying, hey, please let me know what you thought of this episode or.
Yeah, I think the main and best way is to have engaging content. For example, on Life Me, I have an episode about, it's called popping popcorn. So
Okay.
when people see that, they say, "What in the world is that about?" Right? So you want to click on it. And then when you do, it's an episode about popcorn. And I weave in a life lesson into every episode. And the lesson in popping popcorn, for example, is there's only one type of corn that you can use to pop popcorn, because it has to have a certain moisture and all the stuff. And so I go into how everybody is unique and how life is amazing, and how you have to really embrace the highs, the lows, etc. All based on the fact that I love popcorn, and I didn't know that only one type of corn could yield popcorn. And so that that type of content, it engages people and intrigues them and makes them want to listen and engage in the brand. So I think the best way is to create really cool content that piques people's interest and makes them want to know more and engage with you.
So did you get emails afterwards, or what happened after you launched that episode?
I was on a call yesterday, in fact, and people will go to my website and they'll listen, and they'll get a sense of who I am. They'll get a sense of my life philosophies, and it's an automatic connection point. So I've gotten people who will reach out and say, "Well, that was pretty interesting," or they'll say, "Well, I listened to your episode about popping popcorn. I also like popcorn, and I didn't know that." So it's a relationship builder, and it's a way to, again, to deepen those relationships. I always tell people, my goal is to go deep, not so much wide, and having that type of content is a really good way to do that.
Mm-hmm. Because you say you like to go deep with people, right? So how do you also maintain your relationships also with the people that you had on the podcast, for example?
Yep. So the main way that I do that is I have a CRM, and I tag people. So for example, if you've been a guest on my show, there's a tag in there, former guest. I try to jot down your birthday if it's on LinkedIn or something like that, so that when it's your birthday, I'm sending you an email saying, "Hey, happy birthday." So nothing creepy, but just staying in touch, and just asking, would you mind being on my email list, so that there's a consistent touch point where we're engaging with each other. And when they have events, I show up if it's a fit. When I have events, I invite them. But again, it all comes back to really having that organization behind the podcast, where you know who was on the show, who they're looking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I'm looking at former guests, who did they tell me that they wanted to get in front of? And when I see those people, I say, oh, okay, this is so and so. She wants to get in front of bankers. Okay, I just met a banker. Let me connect them, right? So really, just adding value to people over a period of time, and being really intentional about it.
So apart from, really maintaining these relationships and trying to give them as much value as possible, also in terms of connections, what do you think is the best way to really grow your podcast?
The age-old question. Social media plus your email list are the top two, because when you talk about building relationships, a podcast is the ultimate relationship. You are literally occupying somebody's brain for the time that they are listening, right? And it's a passive medium. So unlike video, in video, I have to be looking at the video in order to engage in it, right? With a podcast, I can be, it's winter here in Wisconsin. I could be snow blowing. I could be doing the laundry. I could be doing other things, listening at the same time, but still absorbing the information and the content. It's the only medium that can do that, right? And so you have a unique responsibility and a unique opportunity to share your message and your voice with people. So social media, again, and people's emails, they guard them with their life. So if you can do a great job of engaging people in your podcast, extending that engagement to your social, and then in your email list, those are the trifecta, right? And it also serves as that feedback loop, right? This is how you know if your message is resonating, if it's not, if what you said in your last episode was on point. If it wasn't, once you start to get that feedback loop and you're getting emails or texts or messages from your listeners, that's how you know you're on the right track. And when you get on the right track, do more of that. So whatever you did to get that engagement, do more of that, and that's how you grow. As much as I wish I could say that there's a magic bullet, you run an ad, you boost your post and all that. Really, it just comes down to doing the hard work of understanding what your listener needs, serving that to them, and providing a platform for that feedback. And that's how you grow those deep relationships, right? It might be easier to run a bunch of ads and grow wide, but if you want to grow deep, you really have to have solid content that engages people, and then having that feedback loop.
So you mentioned for growth as well, social media, right? So at the moment, there's this new social media platform on the rise, Clubhouse, that connects people through audio. So I'm curious to get your opinion on it. So what do you think are the new opportunities coming with this?
Yeah, I've been on there a couple of times, and I have to watch it because it's super addictive, hopping through the different rooms. And the thing I love about it so far is you have the opportunity to engage with people that you wouldn't have otherwise engaged with. So I love it for that. I was in a room the other day where Grant Cardone was in there, and
Yes.
a bunch of people that
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm in the room with Grant Cardone. So I love it for that. I think the opportunity is immense. I think people want that type of engagement, and again, audio only, right? So it's passive, and that's the thing that makes it so potent and so powerful. Because again, I can be doing other things and still be engaged and absorbing the information. So I think they have a really unique opportunity right now. They're not the only game in town, but right now they seem to be the hottest game in town. So I think it's going to be fantastic. I think it'll also be a really good thing for podcasting because in my opinion, it's a funnel to your podcast. Because if somebody meets you on the app and they like what you do, like what you're about, they'll tune into your show, and again, that deepens that relationship. So I'm all for it. I have to watch myself so I don't spend too much time on it, but I think it's fantastic.
So do you think that it will have generally like a positive influence on podcasting, or that it also might substitute it a little bit in a way? Because then people have more access to live audio all the time, you know?
I think that initially it might affect it, but I think the thing that makes podcasting is the on-demand aspect of it. You can listen to what you want to listen to when you want to listen to it. I think people will always crave that because they might not have time to tune in at Wednesday at 7. I think honestly, I think radio has the most to worry about because now you have access and it's audio and it's on your phone. So I think long term, radio should be shaking in their boots a little bit because you have podcasting and now you have this new app, this new way people are engaging. So if I were a radio person, I would be all over the app right now, with my brand and getting my people out there, because I think the combination of the app and podcasting poses a bigger threat to radio than it does to podcasting. People are always going to want that level of intimacy where there's just one voice speaking directly to them.
And what are the resources that helped you the most along the way and you would recommend to other people who would like to dive in this topic a little bit more?
The resources, the book that I love is Profitable Podcasting by Stephen Wolzner, I think is his name. That book, and then go through, if you're just starting out, go through our free course. Got to plug ourselves. We have a mini perfect podcast launch mini series. I would do that, And then Entrepreneurs on Fire, they have a good free program as well that I would do. So if you do those three things, you'll be off and running.
All right, awesome. And do you still have a last key takeaway, a personal insight that you would like to share that helped you grow?
I think understanding that it's a process, and knowing that you have to be consistent, but you have to more now than before, because when I started, I would go to networking groups and I was the only person who had a podcast in the room. And about half of the people didn't even know what a podcast was. Now, that's not the case anymore. A lot of people have podcasts, and most people know what a podcast is. So it's more important now to have really strategic, well thought out content. Um, don't just get on a microphone, stream of thought. That will not work anymore. You will not grow that way unless you already have a following. If you're already famous, then sure, you can get on the microphone and say whatever because your followers want to hear from you. But if you're just starting out and you're not famous, you really want to focus on the type of content, who you're targeting, your goals, have metrics, and understand that it's a process. It's going to take time. Be consistent, and focus on quality. You know, I know it's easy to podcast, but it's not advisable to have a low quality show where it sounds like you're talking in a potato. Um, People don't like that in general. So, you know, make sure your show is quality. Make sure that you're focusing on all of the things that I mentioned before: strategy, your goals. You have metrics and ways that you're going to measure growth, because that's going to be different for everybody. And then just track those goals, and really pay attention to the things that you're doing that are working, and the things that you're doing that are not working, and stop doing things that don't work and do more of the things that do work.
And how can people get in touch with you?
The best way is via email, mayor@podcasttown.net, or the website, podcasttown.net.
Awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time today, Elzie. And for everyone who's watching or listening, we would love to hear what your favorite takeaway is from today's conversation. So make sure to let us know below the video.